It's time to talk waiver wire. I'm going to give you my top 10 pickups for this coming week for fantasy baseball. We're starting to see more and more young players getting the call to the majors, getting their shot at the show. So let's start out with one of the biggest names, and that's Matt Mervis of the Chicago Cubs. For those who aren't familiar, what you're getting here is a power-hitting, left-handed first baseman. In other words, the replacement for Eric Hosmer. Mervis has played in 2 games so far for the Cubs, and so far in each game, 1 hit, 1 RBI. Not a bad way to start. The power should come. Very obvious case for him to stick around and be the first baseman because it's been Eric Hosmer. No offense, but it's pretty obvious that his time is done. He's not providing much spark. This Cubs offense has been lighting it up this year, and Mervis might be another catalyst towards the bottom of that order. Now, that's the only thing is he's going to hit 7th, at least right now. Most likely won't move up in the order because they've got enough thump already. But think of the RBI opportunities. Think of the power potential here. Mervis is somebody who's definitely worth adding if you need help at the corner infield spot. And if you play any sort of a keeper league, you got enough room for him. Take him on. And another very similar player in Kansas City is Nick Pratto, who has been a high-end prospect for a couple years. Really up and down his stock has been as far as expectations versus reality. Struggled really early on in the low minors and then caught on, and then it's just been back and forth. They didn't know how he was going to break through, and now he finally has, and making the most of his chances. Got 12 hits in his first 34 at-bats, and he's playing first base and a little bit of right field and batting 5th in that young Royals lineup. And that's key because although Royals offense not nearly what the Cubs offense is so far this year, but there's a lot of potential. A lot of players that we were high on in the preseason like Vinny Pasquantino, of course Bobby Witt, MJ Melendez. I mean, if this group really gels, we could see a lot of fireworks throughout the season. I've personally picked up Pratto in a couple of leagues. I'm going to keep him in there because he's off to a hot start, batting .353. I think it could continue. And the third of the trio in terms of this week's young prospects, as far as hitters are concerned, J.J. Bleday, who is with an Oakland A's. Now, I'm very familiar with Bleday, being a Marlins fan. I know. He was their first-round pick a couple years ago, somebody who was one of the best hitters outright in college at Vanderbilt, had himself a storied career, and was thought to be one of the best pure hitters of the draft class. And so, of course, coming up to the Marlins, he stunk. Hit 167 over parts of last season. Bleday was supposed to be almost a sure thing heading to the majors, and I'm a little surprised, not that he struggled in his first season so much, but that the Marlins gave up on him so quickly. I did talk about this in the preseason. When you look back, my draft sleepers, potential breakouts, I named him because I know it's there, right? It's in there somewhere. Maybe Miami's just not the best environment for hitters these days, but also sometimes it takes a little time to adjust to these major league pitchers. Bleday didn't make the cut out of opening day. He's been in the minors. He was raking in the minors, which is why I mentioned him again a couple of weeks ago. And now that he's up, so far in 4 games, 2 home runs, and he's gotten 2 hits in 3 of the last 4 games, the last 3 to be exact. So could this be another former Marlin who gets traded and then goes on to excel, have an all-star career with another team? It's a little early to make that assumption, but I wouldn't be surprised. Now a more familiar name, that's Harrison Bader, who is with the New York Yankees. Remember back before the season started and we thought, man, there's so much depth there. We're not sure who's really going to get to crack the lineup for the Yankees at any given moment, especially in outfield. Well, we have to remember that Giancarlo Stanton, despite being the most powerful man in Major League Baseball, is also made of glass on the injured list. Unfortunately, Aaron Judge also missing time. Enter Harrison Bader, who's been on the injured list himself since the season began, just now getting back into action. And so he's going to see playing time. He's really in there for his glove, right? That's why he's almost assured semi-regular playing time because he's such a good defender. But now he's doing it with the bat too. He's got some power. He's got some speed. He's got enough of a solid profile in fantasy to keep you interested. He's not wasting time producing either. Got 4 hits in his first 13 plate appearances, a home run, 5 RBIs. So now we have to really consider if he stays healthy, if he gets playing time, is he worth putting in your lineup? The obvious answer is yes, which is why I'm recommending him here. Because one thing he hasn't done yet, but he should do, is help you win steals. Had 17 stolen bases last season, has a sprint speed in the 93rd percentile, and the Yankees definitely a team that likes to run. So Bader, with the run scoring opportunities, driving in runs already, and the stolen bases, if they start to come, you'll be glad you picked him up. So this is somebody I think in any league that's a roto league should be considering if you need outfield help. And then if you need help in the infield, especially middle infield, looking for a short-term fix maybe, I'm going to talk about Ezekiel Duran. Now, I was really big on Duran last year. I added him in a few places. He was hot for a while and then cooled off. And this year, didn't really get a lot of action early on in the season because that Rangers lineup is pretty stacked. But with Corey Seager on the injured list, still not back yet, probably take another couple of weeks. Well, it wasn't Duran who was getting a lot of playing time, it was Josh Smith. And Josh Smith did absolutely nothing with his opportunity, and so he's lost it. He's not seeing any more playing time. Duran is, and that's a good thing because he's taking advantage, hitting .315 so far, and he's playing all around the field. Just in the past week, has 8 RBIs. Now, there's not a big power profile here, and he's not really a base stealer. So you're looking for average, and you're looking for runs and RBIs. And I will say, still look at this as a short-term thing because Corey Seager will be back eventually. Shouldn't be too much longer. And then Duran goes back to kind of his super utility role. But that still makes him valuable because you can slot him in at second, third, or short. So for the meantime, especially if you are a Seager owner and you've been trying to mix and match guys who've been disappointing, just throw Duran in there because it seems like now he's going to be the replacement. Now we're on to the pitching side of things, and it's Miller time. That's right, we have to start with Bryce Miller. The Seattle Mariners got his first turn as a major league starter. Went pretty well. Piled up 10 strikeouts, only allowed 1 run in 6 innings against the Oakland A's. Now, I have to get ahead of this by saying, okay, first of all, it was Oakland, so we'll see what happens when he faces some tougher competition, just different competition. And I am running a little risk here because he's due to make his second start. I don't know how he's going to do in that start, just be honest. But I think even if he doesn't do well, it's okay. You can still add a guy like him because we've seen the upside. And I say this all the time, young pitchers, especially rookies, are going to have ups and downs. So as long as you feel like the ups are going to outweigh the downs, then you can still stick with him. With Robbie Ray out, Bryce Miller does have a chance to stay in the rotation long term. So, of course, we know the risks. I said all this kind of stuff with Logan Allen and Tanner Bibby last week, those Cleveland starters. Yeah, you want to add them, but you just have to acknowledge that there will be some tough days. There is the chance of getting sent down, but that's okay because there's always other guys. Then there's Mason Miller of the Oakland A's, who faced off against Bryce Miller in that last start. Now, he didn't strike out 10, but he did pitch 7 scoreless innings. This is my second call here on Mason Miller because I mentioned him when he first came up. He is a flamethrower. The velocity is definitely there. If you check out his profile so far, it's kind of funky because he's giving up some hard hits, especially that one outing he got torched. His expected stats are really good, which makes you think that maybe his ratios should be better. And over the course of a season, again, I'm assuming that he will stay around in Oakland because, I mean, why not, right? This is not a team that's going to contend this year. They could use him. He's proven that he can handle major league hitters. So I think that we're going to see those ratios actually be very helpful to you. We know it's a favorable pitching environment, and I like his stuff. I like the fact that he can help you in the strikeouts. So this is somebody I think you can view more as a long-term solution. Now let's take it back to last year. I was way too high on Josiah Gray of the Washington Nationals. Somebody who I really like his makeup. I like his pitch mix, but man, he just could not stop giving up taters. Allowed the most home runs in the majors last year, 38 of them in just 28 starts. Well, it looks like he might have fixed his problem. He's given up 5 in 7 starts this year. Got his ERA down to 3.03. Now, there is a little bit of a trade-off here. His strikeout rate is actually down a little bit, but I like the fact he's not trying to overpower hitters. He's not just putting the ball over the plate and challenging hitters because they were winning those battles a lot of times last year. So he's sacrificing a little bit of that K upside in order to give up less hard contact. So far, so good. Results are promising. He's got enough juice that he can help you in your rotation. I think this is the kind of pitcher who now, still young, but experienced enough that he knows what he's doing, changed that pitch mix a little bit, eased off the fastball, adding in a cutter. Those are the kind of adjustments that encourage you about a starting pitcher. Backing up off the youth movement for a little bit, let's go old school and talk about Nate Eovaldi. I always hesitate to either recommend or add Eovaldi because you know the risk. He could land on the IL at any given time. It's happened over and over. But this is a guy that when he's on, he's on. He can strike batters out, and he can put up some really good starts. Well, I think you can say he's done that because he's won 3 of the last 4 starts, and in the last 2, we've seen a complete game shutout, and his last start was 8 scoreless innings. So the man is on fire right now. It was a tough start to 2023, but he's got the ERA down below 4, got the whip to 115, and he struck out 39 batters in 36 innings. So far this season, it looks like I had probably too many shares of Andrew Heaney and not enough of Nate Eovaldi. We'll see if it lasts, but again, you have to look at the results and you have to buy into it because if he's doing what he's doing, I'm going to want him on my roster until it stops. And then let's end with another Cub, and that's Adbert Alzolay, who is possibly the new closer. Just picked up his first save of the season on Saturday. Alzolay definitely has the stuff to be that fireman. He's been pitching in a long relief and then setup man role, and now working his way later and later in the innings as the season goes on. It looked like Michael Fulmer was going to be the closer in Chicago. Only 1 save this year. Kind of had a rough time with an ERA over 6. If you look at Alzolay, he's been doing it all. He's been great with the exception of 1 or 2 bad outings. It jumps off the page to you when you see an xERA and xWOBA combined the 98th percentile. Alzolay is a guy I loved last year, but unfortunately missed almost the entire season with injury. And now that he's back, we just didn't really know what his role was going to be. Knew he wasn't going to be suited for the rotation. They were going to keep him in the bullpen for now. And that might be a good thing. If you're in a league with holds, you probably should have already had some stake in him. But now that he's possibly picking up saves, I think this is a guy you want to get ahead of before the job officially becomes his. And even if it doesn't, I like in leagues where even if saves and holds are categories, you might have a guy who doesn't necessarily have that job at the moment, but if he can help you keep those ratios nice and low and get you some strikeouts and has potential to get saves down the road, injuries happen, guys lose jobs all the time. So kind of a closer in waiting thing. But even if he doesn't get you saves when it all is said and done, he's helping you with your ERA and your whip and your strikeouts as a relief pitcher. So I'm interested in picking him up no matter what format I'm playing. Those are some players I'm adding this week. Who are some players you should be ditching? If you missed it last week, here are the players that you might be panicking about.